Good evening to all. This is G. Mallikarjun. Welcome to Land to Sky Infos. In the last video, we discussed about physical quantities. You know, anything which we can measure is said to be a physical quantity, and that physical quantity is of basically two types, scalars and vectors. Scalars are the physical quantities which have only magnitude but no direction. Example, distance, speed. And vectors are the physical quantities which have both magnitude and also direction. Example, velocity, acceleration, displacement. These are the examples of vectors. In this class, we are going to discuss about types of vectors. You know, every vector can be represented with an arrow mark. Any vector can be represented with an arrow mark, and this vector symbol has two parts. Like say this is head of the vector and say this is tail of the vector. Head of the vector represent in which direction our vectors are representing. Direction of the vector. Tail of the vector represents magnitude of the given vector, value of the vector. So any vector has a head and tail. Head indicates the direction in which it is representing, and tail represents the magnitude of the given vector. So any vector can be represented with an arrow mark. Now come to the topics like vector or parallel vectors. In the name you can see vectors must be parallel to each other. Say this is vector A and say this is vector B. Both are appearing parallel to each other and also same direction. They are maintaining same direction, but magnitude may not be same. So such a type of vectors which are appearing parallel to each other with the same direction, maybe with a different magnitude. Such vectors are called as parallel vectors or like vectors. What if their magnitude is equal? For example, if vector A and vector B are representing like this, say this is vector A and say this is vector B. Both vectors are having same direction, nearly having equal magnitude. Such a type of vectors are called as equal vectors. Equal vectors. The vectors maybe they are parallel, but their direction is same, their magnitude is also same. Such a type of vectors are called as equal vectors. But here these two vectors are parallel to each other. They have same direction like the equal vectors, but magnitude is different here. Such a type of vectors are called as parallel vectors or like vectors. Now come to the unlike vectors. See this? Say this is vector C and say this is vector D. Here vector C and vector D are representing in opposite direction. One vector is in this direction, say another vector is in opposite direction. So these two vectors are appearing parallel, but they are not like. Their direction is opposite. And also their magnitude is also different. Such a type of vectors maybe appears parallel, but their directions are opposite and their magnitude is also different. Such a type of vectors are called as anti-parallel vectors. So parallel vectors, anti-parallel vectors, if the direction and magnitude is same for any two vectors, such vectors are called as equal vectors. Now come to the next vector, that is collinear. Linear means straight. Say these vectors. Say this is vector A and see this is vector B. Vector A and vector B are representing in a straight line. We see that they are representing in a straight line. So linear means straight. If any number of vectors they are representing in a same straight line, we can call them as a collinear vectors. Now come to this coplanar vectors. Very important word it is, plane. any two-dimensional surface can be called as a plane. Any two-dimensional surface can be called as a plane. Your book is a plane surface, your board is a plane surface, right? Or in a simple way, two-axis system like x and y axis system also can be considered as a plane. If any number of vectors, however we represent them, vector A, say this is vector B, say this is vector C. All such vectors can be called as coplanar vectors because they are present in a same plane. Plane means any two-dimensional surface or any two-axis system. So all these three vectors, A, B, C vectors are appearing in a same or representing in a same plane. That's why they are called as coplanar vectors. So here A, B, C are said to be coplanar vectors. Concurrent vectors. Normally this vector is used to express forces acting on a body. Force is also vector, you know. For example, take this body, consider one point here, say F1 force vector is acting at that point, say another force vector is representing at the same point, and one more vector F3 vector, say. So here force is also one of the vector. So we are representing force in the form of vectors here. So F1, F2, F3 are the force vectors which are acting at a same point on a body. So forces are acting on a body, but all that forces are acting at a same point. Such a type of vectors which are acting at a same point on a body is called as concurrent vectors. Now come to this co-initial vectors. Initial means starting. Initial means starting. Initial means starting. Co, any number of vectors. Any number of vectors having same starting point. For example, say this is that point from where these vectors are starting. Say this is vector A, say this is vector B, say this is vector C. Vector A, vector B and vector C are starting from a same point. Such vectors are called as co-initial vectors. So any vectors which are having same starting point are called as co-initial vectors. Now terminal, come to the terminal. You can understand now. Terminal means end point. Terminal means end. Any number of vectors which have same end point. For example, say this is that point, say this is vector A, say this is vector B, say this is vector C. So here A, B, C are the vectors which are having same end point. Such a type of vectors are called as co-terminal vectors.